Hello and welcome back to another Rhino video. My name is Sam and today we're going to be talking about curves. So we touched a little bit on these in the basics video, but we're going to get a little bit more in depth in terms of how they just kind of work with each other and how we can start to build a model from curves. So for starters, we're familiar with the work plane here. I just have a layer over here. I'll just call it curves and it'll be light blue. We are also in the curve tools drop down here. There's a ton of stuff going on here, but we're mainly going to be using typed commands because I still think they're the best way to operate. So for starters, what we're going to do is just make it line. So you can just type line, and what that will do is let you just make a line between 2 points like we did before. Now make sure to have planar on down here at the bottom center of your screen, as well as grid snap. It'll make things easier for the purposes of keeping things associated with the grid and one flat construction plane. If we look in our top-down view, we can see exactly how things are being built in 2D. You could work from here if you want. I often do when I'm doing just a flat drawing as if I was in AutoCAD, but you can also work in 3D. Depending on what you want. We'll work primarily from 3D just so you can see the possibilities, because once you start using curves to inform three-dimensional geometry, it's good to see it in perspective as well as the elevations and plan views. So back to our perspective, what we can do, so that's a line. We can also make a polyline, and I tend to use this command instead of the line tool because if we make a line between 2 points here with the polyline, you'll see it gives you an option for a third point, which you could do, or we can, Control Z to go back just between those two, and if you hit Enter, it'll just make one singular line. So there's not really a purpose to use a line tool. So if we make a polyline, we also have the option to hold Shift, and if you'll see at the bottom of your center screen there, it turns on ortho. And that will allow you to draw at sharp 90-degree angles. So in our top-down view, you'll see it here. So every line that you make, if you're holding Shift, will be completely 90 degrees. And that works really well for making something like a building plan, or just sort of snapping in between flat orthogonal geometry. You'll also notice that when you select a line, points show up, but if you hit escape afterwards twice, they'll disappear. Alternatively, if you select a line and hit F10, it'll turn the points on and they'll remain on. And if you select it again and hit F11, they'll turn off and on. You also have a control point curve, which is this button up here. So if we select that, that will allow us to make a more organic curvature based on these control points that we can then also move. If we look in our top down, so you can adjust where those curves happen. You can also turn those points on with F10 and they'll remain, or F11 to turn them off. Another nifty thing that you can do with a control point curve is you can rebuild it by typing rebuild, and that will give you a couple options here. So you can see the original curve is highlighted in yellow based on those initial points, but if you want to simplify it and smooth it out, you can set a new point count, right? If we said 15 preview, it would probably give us the same thing, roughly, despite the degree. But if we use maybe less points, it'll allow us to make a smoother curve. And then it keeps the same general shape, but it almost anchors it to a new series of equidistant points. And that works really well if you're doing some kind of landscaping that you want to follow, say, the geometry of a building very rigidly, but then you have an instance where it might get a little too complicated because you made too many, and you just want to simplify it a bit. So maybe you choose a new set of points there and you'll always get a highlight where the maximum differences change. So we'll hit OK there, and you'll see you can get a more fit and smooth uniform curve. Beyond that, we can also make just a rectangle. If you type rectangle, alternatively, they're all over here for more standard shapes. And we can choose 1 point, and then you can either click wherever you want, or you could choose an input value, like let's say 40 feet, enter by 30 feet. And you'll see this prompts you up at the top every time, right? So it asks for the length and then asks for the width. And you can say 30 feet, and there's your 30 by 40. Or I think I made a 30 by 30. Yeah, so it's a square there. We can always Control Shift click one of the sides and move it out 10 feet using the gumball. So now we have a 30 by 40 foot rectangle. So from here, we can run an offset command by typing offset, and that allows you to choose a distance. And let's say if we wanted to make a wall that's a foot thick, we could say 1 foot, enter, and then you pick the side that you want to offset on. You can see the preview there, similar to the rebuild command. Go on the inside, and now you have sort of a thickness to your wall, right? And if we look at this from the top down, you can see it there. You can also then Control Shift click part of that polyline, right? Instead of selecting the whole thing. And we could make a duplicate of that by either running a copy command, copy from here, and then we could snap near and then say just move, I don't know, maybe you want a 10-foot room, right? So you go 10 feet and you see you're bound to sort of that distance. And if you hold Shift, of course, like we did with the polyline, it'll snap you to the orthogonal projection from that line, right? Alternatively, you could run another offset, and under distance, you could click up here, click distance, change that from 1 foot to 10 feet, and that will let you do a similar command. You can start to see that there's a lot of different ways to do different functions in Rhino. From there, you could take this one, offset that, and maybe you want only a 5-inch thick wall, right? So you could say, yep, 5 inches there, done. So now you're starting to get an idea of how you can start to actually draw a plan in Rhino. If you want to make another polyline, type polyline. Using your snaps, you can find the midpoint of one of these rooms. You could move it over and then, of course, do the similar thing. Just make duplicates all you want. Maybe you make some 5-foot spacing or what have you, but you can start to actually define the sort of elements of this space. We could make another duplicate over here that's 15 feet. You could even make a duplicate and rotate it 90 degrees. You could move that to the midpoint, and then you could start to even select these various points here and snap them to other things. So let's say, these walls aren't going to intersect this wall, right? Walls don't overlap like that exactly, right? So what you might want to do is run it like a split command. So you can say, I want to split these two objects, enter, with these objects, right? And then you can hit enter again. So two curves have been split into 10 pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then these ones are the ones that are split. So you can delete those and delete these. If one of these lines projected beyond something that you didn't want it to, you could use a trim command, type trim, and you could select the cutting objects there, and maybe that one too, hit enter, and then choose to cut that one and that one, right? So that's another way to get that. And if you wanted this wall to be a duplicate down below, at let's say like a 9-foot room or something, or above, it's just you can just hold Alt, click the arrow, -9 feet, enter, right? And you can start to get an idea there. As far as just sort of, finding a way to build maybe walls, this is sort of how it would work. You could make a line at the midpoint between these, and then you could maybe offset it 3 feet on each side. Run it again over there. Trim that. That one is the fence. Hit enter. Select those. Enter. Boom. There. So now you have a doorway. We'll show you different ways how to make holes in walls and things like that. But this is more or less how you would start to make maybe a floor plan in Rhino. So we have lines, polylines, control point curves. You can make rectangles. You can trim, split, explode, or join. Right? So again, those commands work like this, where if we make a rectangle, such as that, right? You can see it's one polyline that you can move around. If we explode it, now it's in 4 segments. 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And then, of course, we could take 2 of them, join them together, and now those are one open curve. These are separate. So if you were to select, say, that vertex, you can move it away, and it's not joined. But if you selected this one, you'll find they move together. So that is more or less how curves work in Rhino. Things get a little more complicated when you start to move them in 3 dimensions, but we'll get into that a little bit when we start talking about surfaces in the next video. So cool, thanks for watching, and I'll see you there.